Are we ready for this? All right. Mary, are you ready?
I'm sorry. Can we just have a couple more minutes? Aldo was having trouble signing on.
All right, Crystal. Yes, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Aldo. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Good evening, Aldo. So I was saying a moment ago, I've got 6:30 and looks like we're all seated. If everyone's ready, we could probably start. No? Yes? All right. Mary, you're on and ready as well?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, good evening. Welcome to the February 16, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Please note that this meeting is being attended by the Planning Commission and applicants via teleconference. We thank you for your patience as we navigate city business through this new meeting process. For the benefit of the public and as required by the Brown Act, all voting will be by roll call. I will now call the meeting to order. Roll call, please. Could the Planning Secretary Kavanaugh please call roll?
Commissioner Uva,
Present.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Present.
Commissioner Duarte,
Present.
Vice Chair Montoya,
Present.
and Chair Owens.
Present, thank you. Next item is the Planning Commissioner announcements, requests for future agenda items, and conference and or meeting reports. Would any commissioners like to report or make requests in regards to this? Vice Chair Montoya?
I've got nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Duarte?
None for me either.
Commissioner Ortiz?
And for me either. Thank you.
And Commissioner Uva?
None for me.
Thank you. I don't have any announcements myself either. Next order on the agenda, presentations. Deputy City Manager Schindler, are there any presentations tonight?
Chair Owens, no presentations tonight.
Thank you. Next item, report on City Council action. Deputy City Manager Schindler, are there any City Council actions to report?
Yes, sir, Chair Owens, we have a couple. At the last council meeting, the City Council heard an ordinance introduction for Senate Bill 9, the same information that was presented to the Planning Commission at a prior meeting. The City Council wanted us to take a pause and talk about some items with some community members that submitted some questions. And so staff and Councilmember Trujillo are going to do that and then ultimately return back to council with that ordinance. Also, the council heard the housing element update topic, and same that the Planning Commission has heard and adopted that item at their last meeting. And lastly, we presented to council a grant opportunity from the state of California to access further services for our homeless population in terms of rehousing and other resources. And the council approved that item as well. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Schindler. Before we get into public hearings, I wanted to turn over the mic for a moment to Ms. Uva, who may have an announcement in regards to item number 1. Please, Ms. Uva.
Yes, thank you. Out of an abundance of caution and on the advice of the city attorney, I will be abstaining from item number 1, public hearing item number 1, as I have known the applicant and his family for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. So on that agenda item, we're now going to open and move on to public hearings. The public hearing for secondary driveway application PLN 21-00035 located at 9234 Lemeron Avenue is now open. Deputy City Manager Schindler, can you introduce the staff person presenting this item?
Thanks, Chair Owens. Tonight, we have our senior planner, Alfonso Hernandez, to make the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Owens and members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, you're being asked to consider a secondary driveway for RV storage. The applicant is Mario Limatola. This is an area of the subject property outlined in red. It is located at 9234 Lemeron Avenue. It is a corner lot and sits at the northeast corner of Lemeron and Appleby Street, just north of Gallatin Road. The property is found within the R1 7500 zone. The surrounding properties are also R1 zones and developed with single family homes. Here's a photo of the subject property off of Lemeron. The subject property is 7,562 square feet with a 3,216 square foot 2-story home. The property also has a 2-car garage. The application was prompted due to a code enforcement case. The extension of the driveway and curb cut were done without permits. This application will correct that violation and ensure compliance with development standards. The driveway dimensions are 10 feet wide by 30 feet long before getting to the rear concrete pad where the RV will be stored. Sorry, correction, it's 10 feet wide by 40 feet long. Within the street side yard, the driveway will incorporate a ribbon strip design. This is required by the zoning code to regulate the amount of concrete located within the front and street side setbacks. The driveway and pad is exclusively for recreational vehicles. Here's the proposed plot plan for orientation purposes. The right of the image is Appleby Street and the bottom is Lemeron. To the left of the existing driveway is where the new secondary driveway will be located. And here's an example of what secondary driveways look like. In conclusion, it is staff's opinion that all findings can be made in a positive manner. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Bear with me a moment. I know that Commissioner Duarte had this down to a science. He got to do it 2 years in a row. So here we go. At this moment, we wanted to open up the public hearing on this. And before we do that, does any commissioner have any questions of city staff? So Vice Chair Montoya.
No questions as of yet. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Commissioner Duarte.
I just want one question to staff. Is this secondary driveway, is this something that's pretty consistent with other driveways that have been granted in the past? Or is this kind of, is this a recent issue that's popping up now?
I wouldn't say they're necessarily consistent. So the code did change in 08, and we've only gotten a few of them since 08. The ones before 08 are consistent with this design. Some of the others are just pure concrete, but from today's code of 08, they're consistent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Ortiz, any questions of staff?
No questions. I think Chair Duarte asked my question. But actually, I do have one question. The majority of the driveways that he said that started from 08 have been for RV parking?
In our code, they're exclusively for RV. They can't be used for anything else.
Okay. Okay.
Sure. Commissioners, to be clear, so we're referencing where this is applicable and where the occurrences occurred. We don't mean to imply that this is the condition throughout the city or a certain area since 2008. The code changed at that time, and when we have the ability to apply it, we apply it based on the space at the property.
Thank you. No questions.
Okay, I have one. Or comment and question. So in the presentation, it was stated that this item in front of us comes about a little after the fact, or a little, different than, initially. And so this, my understanding is the approval of this will certainly satisfy and correct that situation, the code enforcement piece, or the warning, or the the notice of non-compliance, if you will. I didn't see in the drawing though, a lot of these RV parking places that are put at residences usually, or sometimes, most times, may have a clean out to the public, or to the house connection to the public sewer system. Is there anything proposed for this?
No, that's not proposed.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my questions. And thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Okay, so before we begin the public hearing, I'd like to remind members of the public participating telephonically that the city's meeting rules contained in the Downey Municipal Code prohibit any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting, even if you are participating telephonically. Each speaker shall have 3 minutes to address the commission. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding the public hearing for item PLN 21-00035 only may now call our teleconference line at 562-299-6622. For those who submitted comments via email, your comments will be read into the record, and no further public comment via teleconference will be permitted. I will now open the public hearing, and we'll start by inviting the applicant to address the commission. Before I call the applicant or his or her representative, this would be the time for planning commissioners to discuss any pre-hearing visits or pre-hearing discussions that the commissioners may have had about the project. I'll now take turns. If the applicant would like to please make comment, and then we'll take public hearing comment. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mario Limatola. I'd like to thank the commission for taking on this case and project and assisting me. This has been a challenge for myself and my family for a number of years. We've tried so many times to get something done for this. We've had boats and whatnot in the past, and the secondary driveway was never really an option. So I was very happy and pleased to find that there was a solution to this. And I really appreciate the commission's cooperation in assisting me with this.
Thank you, Mark. So at this time, Secretary Kavanaugh, do we have any speakers on the line?
There are no calls for public comment.
All right. And also, Secretary Kavanaugh, do we have any written correspondence or public comment that needs to be read into the record?
No written correspondence.
Okay. And then the last thing, do we have proof of publication on this item?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Since there were no comments, I'll ask the applicant, you do have a chance to have a rebuttal, but if you have no rebuttal, then we can move on. All right, seeing no rebuttal. All right. Do any of the commissioners have any question of the applicant? Vice Chair Montoya?
Yeah, I had one question. I wanted to know, what is if you're able to say, what is the length of your RV? Because I know that, or at least I noticed on the plans that the secondary driveway would go back from the street about 80 feet. So I just kind of wanted to know how long your RV was and where I guess you would generally park it along the second driveway. It would be further towards the back or closer towards the front.
The RV is 33 feet long
Okay.
and it will go all the way to the very back.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Duarte
No questions.
and Commissioner Ortiz.
No questions. Just for clarification, there was no written comments on this item, or am I mistaken that there was one in regards to this item?
Mr. Chair, if I can clarify, there were written comments that were received prior to the staff report and the agenda going out. So it was included as an attachment to your staff report. Since it's gone out, it's part of the public record as an attachment to the staff report. Therefore, it was not read again into the record tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Ortiz, did you want to spend a minute, maybe look through the report real quick to see if you're in agreement or have any comment on that, any comments submitted by the public? Any of the commissioners would wish to do that for a moment, or we're good to go? Commissioner Montoya, good to go still?
Yeah, I read the public comments, so I'm good to go.
All right, Commissioner Duarte?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right, and Commissioner Ortiz?
Thank
You're good? Okay, I'm good as well. Thank you. Okay, we can now begin deliberation. I'll take turns asking each commissioner if they have any comments. So,
Chairman, what you might want to do, just make sure there's no one else out in our virtual world that wants to speak, and then close the public hearing. And then
Okay.
you can get into deliberation.
all right, thank you for the advice, Attorney.
No problem.
Okay, so Ms. Kavanaugh, any other speakers on the phone?
There are no calls for public comment.
All right, so at this time, I'll gavel shut the public
Oh,
comment.
one moment. I think we might have do we have anybody here for this item? If we could just announce that again?
All right, is there anyone that would like to speak on this item?
Thank
No,
you.
thank
Sorry for the repetition.
That's okay. All right, now I'll close the public comment part of this. Okay, so back around the commissioners, any commissioner have any comment in regards to this proposal?
I guess I would have a question for staff, just for clarity. There's currently no code for, or at least there's no code limiting size of an RV, correct?
There's not.
Okay. Then, I mean, I've got no further issues then to discuss.
Thank you, Commissioner Montoya. Commissioner Duarte?
No, I have none. I mean, it conforms to our code section here. So I think this is a go for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Ortiz?
I'm the same.
Thank you. All right, so I'm in the same place. I think this is a long time coming, really. If you have the space to put your boat, put your motorcycle trailer, put your RV, if it's unsightly or if it, passes the current conditions, I'm great with that. And like you had all said, I believe this, passes the findings. So can I receive a motion from any particular commissioner?
I motion to pass PLN-21-00035.
I'll second that.
Okay, Secretary Kavanaugh, could you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Uva is abstaining. Commissioner Ortiz?
Yes.
Commissioner Duarte?
Yes.
Vice Chair Montoya?
Yes.
And Chair Owens?
Yes.
And the motion passes with 4 in favor and 1 abstention to approve PLN 21-00035 for a secondary driveway.
Okay. All right, so with that item being done, I don't see here the disclosure statement that it goes to council for approval as a recommendation. We have that, okay. Not necessary, understood, all right. And Commissioner Uva, has she rejoined us?
I'm trying. There we go.
All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda tonight is the public hearing for a secondary driveway application, PLN-2100178, located at 12056 Reeves Avenue, is now open. Deputy City Manager Schindler, could you introduce the staff person presenting this item, please?
Thank you, Chair Owens. Once again, we have our senior planner, Alfonso Hernandez, that'll step up to the plate. You're muted. Still muted.
I think I'm fine this time. Good evening again, Chairman Owens and members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, you're being asked to consider another secondary driveway for RV storage. The applicant is Donald McKinnon. This is an area of the subject property outlined in red. It is located at 12056 Reeves Avenue.
Alfonso, your screen isn't being shared right now.
Sorry for the difficulties. Let me fix that. I believe it's being shared now.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, sorry for the difficulties. So tonight, again, you're being asked to consider a secondary driveway for RV storage. This is an area of the subject property outlined in red. It is located at 12056 Reeves Avenue. It is an interior lot located south of Stewart and Gray Road. The property is found within the R1 5000 zone. The surrounding properties are also R1 and developed with single family homes. Here's a photo of the subject property. The subject property is 15,440 square feet with a 1,440 square foot one-story home and a 1,000 square foot ADU. There's also a 2-car garage on site. The driveway dimensions will be 10 feet wide by 75 feet long before getting to the rear concrete pad. Within the front yard, the driveway will incorporate a ribbon strip design. This is required by the code to regulate the amount of concrete located within the front yard. The driveway and pad are exclusively for RV parking. Here is the proposed site plan for orientation. To the left of the image is Reeves Avenue. To the bottom of the image, you can see the new proposed driveway and pad. The existing driveway is separated to the north of the home. This will create a layout where there's a driveway on either side of the home. And again, here's an example of a ribbon strip driveway. In conclusion, it is staff's opinion that all findings can be made in a positive manner. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Does the secretary have proof of publication?
Yes, we do.
All right. I will now take turns asking each one of the commissioners if they have any questions for staff. Commissioner Montoya.
No questions for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Duarte.
No questions.
Commissioner Ortiz.
No questions.
And Commissioner Uva.
No questions.
And I would have just the same as the last applicant or the last item in front of us. I don't see it. Is there any proposal to attach this through clean out to the city sewer system through the residential sewer system to it?
No, that's not proposed.
All right, thank you. Before we begin the public hearing, I'd like to remind members of the public participating telephonically that the city's meeting rules contained in the Downey Municipal Code prohibit any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting, even if you are participating electronically. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the commission. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding the public hearing for item PLN 21-00178 only may now call our teleconference line 562-299-6622. For those who submitted comments via email, your comments will be read into the record and no further public comment via teleconference will be permitted. I'll now open the public hearing and we'll start by inviting the applicant to address the commission. Before I call the applicant or his or her representative, this would be the time for planning commissioners to disclose any pre-hearing visits or pre-hearing discussions that the commissioners may have had about the project. I will now take turns asking each commissioner if they have any questions for the applicant. Vice Chair Montoya, any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, maybe we hold this until the applicant speaks. Maybe we'll stand down on our comments and invite the applicant to speak first, correct?
Yes, thank you for the allowing me to speak. I would appreciate your time in reviewing this and accepting this second driveway. I'm looking forward to retiring and getting myself a nice RV to travel the country, and it won't fit in the driveway that I already have because there's an awning that a car can only fit under. So thank you for your time and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Okay, so now I will go across the commissioners and ask, does any particular commissioner have any question of the applicant? Vice Chair Montoya.
No questions for me.
Commissioner Duarte.
No questions, just a comment. Enjoy the retirement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ortiz.
No questions. Thank you, Chair.
And Commissioner Uva.
No questions for me either.
And I have none, thank you. So with that though, let's ask the applicant, that although we had no comments, do you have any rebuttal?
Do I have any what?
Rebuttal. Anything you'd like to say back to us?
No.
All right.
I can think of. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We can now begin deliberation. I'll take turns asking each commissioner if they have any comments. Vice Chair Montoya, any comment on this item?
The public hearing is closed.
I'm sorry. I will close the public hearing. And now I'll ask the commission to please provide comments. Vice Chair Montoya, any comment?
No comments from me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Duarte?
No comments, just this is like a go for me.
All right. Commissioner Ortiz?
Maybe I should start getting an RV too.
That or retire.
Oh, retired. No question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Ms. Uva, please.
Nothing from me either.
And I have nothing. So at this point, could someone please entertain a motion? I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I motion to pass PLN -21-00178.
Second it.
So we have a motion in a second. Secretary Kavanaugh, would you please take roll for the roll call vote?
Commissioner Uva,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Duarte,
Yes.
Vice Chair Montoya,
Yes.
and Chair Owens.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously with all 5 in favor to approve PLN 21-00178 for a secondary driveway.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, that closes that. I'm moving on. The public hearing for a citywide zoning code amendment, application PLN 22-00020 is now open. And as Deputy City Manager Schindler, can you introduce the staff person presenting this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair Owens. Tonight we have our city planner, Crystal Landavazo, making the presentation.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, you are asked to consider a zone text amendment that would introduce and establish regulations for tattoo establishments throughout the city, as well as update some of our standards for home-based businesses referred to as home occupations. This item is before you tonight as a cleanup item to update our municipal code in order to ensure compliance with the most recent court ruling. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals determined that tattoo establishments provide artistic expression protected under the First Amendment, and municipal codes that prohibit these uses were unconstitutional. To specify, the Downey Municipal Code does not specifically prohibit tattoo establishments. However, the land use table within our municipal code states that if a use is not specifically identified, then it is inherently prohibited. Therefore, what we're proposing tonight will clean up our municipal code by introducing tattoo establishments into our land use table and also establishing regulations for these types of uses. Tattoo establishments are subject to regulations from outside agencies, and any establishment that operates within the city will be required to comply with all of these outside standards. They are regulated by OSHA, they are regulated by the Centers for Disease Control, and there are government health code and safety sections for this. Again, because there is blood that can be involved, there are very specific and stringent sterilization, sanitization, and safety standards that they are going to be required to comply with. The code language that we are introducing, rather than spell out all of those items, we're referring to that government code section by reference so that any future updates will automatically be applied to any of these establishments and we don't have to go in and update our municipal code each time. The zone text amendment will allow tattoo establishments to operate in all commercial zones where personal service uses are allowed. Personal service uses you'll typically see are barbershops, beauty salons, and nail salons. These businesses, tattoo establishments, will be required to comply again with the outside agency requirements, with all health and safety regulations, and maintain a valid public health permit that must be posted on the premises at all times. The zoning code will be further amended, again, because these are commercial uses, to specify that they are only allowed in commercial zones and specifically prohibit these establishments from operating in residential zones. As such, our home occupation regulations within the Downey Municipal Code will be updated. While updating the municipal code for the home occupation standards, staff thought it was prudent to clean up our existing operating standards for the home occupation to make sure that there were clear operating standards and facilitate these home occupation, home business permits for the residents throughout the city. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed zone text amendment, again, bringing the city into compliance with the most recent court cases in regard to tattoo establishments. Just again, to make sure that we have it identified as a use and that we have specific standards that will be applied to it. Again, we are looking to clean up our home occupation standards as well. And this concludes staff's report, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Landavazo. I will go each commissioner one at a time to see if you have any questions of city staff. Vice Chair Montoya.
No questions for me.
Commissioner Duarte.
No questions.
Commissioner Ortiz.
I do have one question. I know some cities allow these tattoos, businesses and piercings to be open 24 hours. Is it ideal to limit the times from it to be 24 hours to a certain time period? Because I know that you, if I read correctly, you allow the home services from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah, for the home-based businesses, they're allowed to operate 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. is typically the hours that they're allowed to operate. In the commercial section of our zoning code, we don't have regulations as far as operating hours for any of our other businesses. what we found is that we can't apply any regulations that would be more strict that to tattoo establishments that wouldn't be applied to personal services. However, we can go back and take a look to see if maybe we can make the comparison that most personal service uses don't operate beyond a certain time. And we can try to make that argument. We would have to go back again with legal counsel to make sure that that's something that we can add. If that's something that the planning commission wants to recommend, we can make that recommendation to the city council.
Sure. In planning commissioner, if I can add, so we can't go after a specific use is what we're getting at. And currently our code allows businesses to stay open 24 hours unless they're proposing a use that requires a CUP, like live entertainment. I've worked in other cities that have a time restriction where if a business wants to be open beyond 12 a.m., then it has to request a CUP. And that's a blanket requirement for all businesses within the city. Therefore, you're not just pointing out one specific type of business. So once again, that doesn't exist in Downey, hasn't existed, as long as I can remember, and probably for decades. Just wasn't anything that was written in the code for whatever reason. So as Crystal was saying, if that's something that the Planning Commission wants us to pursue, it would be a blanket requirement that would capture everybody. So if a 7-Eleven wants to stay open past 12 a.m., where previously they didn't require a CUP, they'd have to come in for a CUP. If a restaurant that, like a Norm's, wants to stay open, beyond 12 a.m., they've got to come in for a CUP. So if you're a business, now you've got to pay, a couple $1,000 to stay open past 12 a.m. where previously you didn't. So that's kind of the balance that the commission needs to consider. And it's something that we would come back at a later date if the commission, in fact, wanted to provide us that direction. And that's also something that the city council would need to approve as well.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
No further questions.
Okay, Commissioner Uva, any questions?
I have a couple of questions, and I think they're more just clarification for me. On our agenda package on page 6, I don't know, Crystal, if you have that. Okay. Towards the bottom of the page, it defines personal services and it lists a bunch, like, what does it say? Barbershops, beauty and nail. Will the words body art and tattoo facilities then be included in that verbiage?
So personal services was amended to remove permanent cosmetic facial shading because it's now incorporated into body art.
Okay, got it. And then on page 9 of the agenda, towards the bottom of that page as well, the following uses shall not be permitted as a home occupation. The way I read this and the way I thought you explained it was that a tattoo shop cannot operate in a home occupation kind of situation because it has to be commercial zoning. So it does say body art facilities under item number D, that implies tattoo facilities?
Yes.
Is that enough verbiage to imply that it's encompasses tattoo facilities?
Sure, we did identify it as body art facilities. We thought that would be more all encompassing as opposed to specifying just tattoo establishment. So it does the facial shading and those other items as well.
So that would be like when the females do that stuff for their eyelashes, that microblading.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
Okay. My comment would be this, or questions of Ms. Landavazo. So I'll just give you for instance, the Downey Landing has some retail space available. A body art or, if you will, tattoo parlor could open up in that retail space. The owner of the retail space could condition, or would it be us that would condition the operating hours? Let's say the restaurant's in that in that area, shut down at 10 or midnight, would that force, a body art facility to shut down at midnight? Or could they come and say, we want to go 24 hours and bring that item to us?
The city would not be the one to establish the closing time. If it is something that as a center, the property manager decides that they want all businesses closed by a certain hour, that would be a private lease agreement that's handled separately without the city being involved.
All right. And although I use the landing as it has multiple tenant spaces, there may be a smaller retail space and that may also exist there. The operator may say same thing and it may never come in front of us, but most likely each and every one of these applicants or applications would come in front of us, you think?
No, the proposed ordinance would allow them by right, because we are not allowed to conditionally approve, require conditional use permits for the use. It has to be allowed by right.
Because of the First Amendment issue.
Got it. Understood. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Before we begin the public hearing, I'd like to remind members of the public participating telephonically that the city's meeting rules contained in the Downey Municipal Code prohibit any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting, even if you are participating telephonically. Each speaker shall have 3 minutes to address the commission. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding the public hearing for item PLN 22-00020 only may now call our teleconference line 562-299-6622. Those who submitted comments via email, your comments will be read into the record and no further public comment via teleconference will be permitted. Step back for a moment. Does the secretary have proof of publication?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing and we'll start by inviting the applicant to address the commission. Before I call the applicant or his or her representatives, this is the time for the planning commissioners to disclose any pre-hearing visits or pre-hearing discussions that the commissioners may have had about the project. So any Commissioner Montoya or Vice Chair Montoya, anything to disclose?
I've had no visits or discussions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Duarte?
No disclosures, thank you.
Commissioner Ortiz?
No disclosures, Chair.
And Commissioner Uva?
Nothing for me.
All right. So at this point, could the applicant, do we have an applicant?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I wanted to clarify that point. There isn't an outside applicant. This is provided by staff, again, as a cleanup item for our municipal code.
All right. So I think we've gone through the round of questions of the commissioners to staff. Is there, at this point, is there any callers on the phone or any communications sent to us via email or other electronic fax or so?
Chair Owens, there are no calls nor written correspondence for public comments.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. So there is no rebuttal, so I will entertain a motion.
So you'll close the public hearing?
I will close the public hearing and now entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass PLN-Q2-00020.
Second.
All right, with a motion and a second, Madam Kavanaugh, Secretary Kavanaugh, could you please take roll?
The motion passes to approve unanimously with all 5 in favor to approve PLN 22-00.
Mary, we need a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
I'm sorry. Got ahead of myself. Okay. Commissioner Uva?
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz?
I have a question. Are we going to allow this to be open to discuss between commissioners, or are we completely?
Since there's a motion and a second and you're at the roll call, all discussion is stopped. That's right.
Is there an ability for us to have a discussion? I would like to provide the opportunity to any planning commissioner that wants to chat about it.
And I apologize if I missed that. Yeah, I feel strongly that way too. If anyone has any comments, I think it would be appropriate.
Okay, so we'll step back the roll call vote and just leave the motion and a second on the floor and then ask for discussion.
Okay, at this time, any commissioners have any they would like to comment or make this comment or have discussion on? Vice Chair Montoya.
No, I've got nothing really further to add or discuss with this one, but open to discussing it with my peers though.
Thank you. Commissioner Duarte?
No, just not really any questions, just maybe a comment. I think going to Commissioner Ortiz's point about, maybe a tattoo shop staying open 24 hours or not. Again, a lot of times I think the commercial property owner, we will regulate it, and just businesses seem to regulate themselves in terms of operating hours. I guess the only thing I would be looking at is, say if we had a tattoo place that, got a little unruly. I'm just thinking about, what, if any, measures we could take to maybe bring them back in order to, discuss any issues that might be going on. I don't, I know what was mentioned by Aldo and Crystal in terms of, this is kind of this applies to everybody, and I think it'd be a bigger hassle to have, commercial places like restaurants, everybody ask for a CUP, especially since, we don't have the issue yet. We can anticipate, but again, that's hasn't really happened yet. So I that's my only thing is that, if there's any measures, any teeth to if anybody's, has a place, a body art place that it is open 24 hours and gets a little unruly, any measures that we can take would be my question and comment, I guess.
Planning commissioners, if I may. Of course, our police department is extremely vigilant in terms of what's happening at our establishments. And so they'd be the ones to respond to those calls, that may occur, let's say, in the evening after our normal business hours. And if those sites are turning into a problem based on calls for service that are generated and analyzed by the police department, or calls that we're receiving from residential neighbors that are adjacent to a commercial building, or even other commercial buildings that are adjacent to the subject property, our ability is to revoke their business license or not grant them another business license. So somebody not having a business license cannot operate within our city. And if in fact we had a problem use and a business license was revoked or was not renewed, then we would have the ability to move on that business, to remove them and or work with them to come into compliance.
Thank you, Aldo.
Thank you, Aldo.
Commissioner Ortiz, your comments, please.
You're muted, Commissioner.
Sorry, thank you. Like I was saying, I was sharing the same sentiment as Chair Duarte, or excuse me, I was used to it. Commissioner Duarte, in regards to what we can do just in case these tattoo parlors or piercing shops are open 24 hours and they get a little ruling, what we can do as a body to ensure safety for our communities, especially because they're in this area where they mentioned maybe downtown Downey or somewhere near a high school or promenade. So I just want to see what we can do. So I'm glad, I guess some reassurance was made. It was just very difficult for me to ask staff to look, because for a whole businesses to operate at a certain time and bring them back over here for a review, that's going to be a little tedious. So that's my comments for this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Uva?
I have nothing further to add other than I concur with my colleagues here on everything that was just said. And thanks for the explanation, Aldo, on what can happen if things kind of go not good or whatever. So that's good.
Sure, and I'd like to add that action that I mentioned is universal for any business. Those that have CUPs, we have those extra teeth, but any business within the community that's not operating, under appropriate guidelines, we have the ability to pursue those in the same manner that I described.
Thank you. Although my only comment would be, yeah, like the rest of the commissioners, I have utmost confidence in the city staff and although this is uncharted territory for us, it's just the way it's going. And I kind of, we do craft and or guide and or, make recommendations to bring the best level, of a client or business into town. I think in the case of a body art operator or what it develops into piercings and so on, it probably ends up being the higher end. I think we'll be blessed that way too, and staff will guide that accordingly. So that would be my comments. Okay.
And I'm sorry, Commissioners, just one more thing I wanted to add. I don't need to beat a dead horse, but the city of Downey, good, bad, or indifferent, is known for having strict design standards. And more times than not, people do get bummed out about how strict we are when a business comes to the counter. Our intention is to produce the best looking buildings and businesses for our community. So that's going to carry through with tattoo parlors. So in terms of wall signs, other business signs, lack of miscellaneous signage on the windows, that's all going to be enforced. And if we've got standard code enforcement issues with those business storefronts, we're going to enforce them, even regardless if they're open late at night and operating well, or bad. So we want the tattoo parlors, to look as good as any other businesses, and they'll need to comply just based on what their storefronts look like with the other businesses in our community as well.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Okay, so at this point, I guess we could pick up where we left off. Do I need to close this discussion, or can we just go further with the motion and the second and move on the vote?
Yes, you have a motion and second on the floor, and so you just call for roll call.
Okay, so back to Secretary Kavanaugh. Could you please call roll?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Uva?
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Yes.
Commissioner Duarte?
Yes.
Vice Chair Montoya?
Yes.
And Chair Owens?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously with all 5 in favor to approve PLN 22-00020 for a zoning code amendment.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the non-agenda public comment. Before we begin the non-agenda public comment period, I'd like to remind members of the public participating telephonically that the city's meeting rules contained in the Downey Municipal Code prohibit any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting, even if you are participating telephonically. Each speaker shall have 3 minutes to address the commission on issues that are within the commission's jurisdiction. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding non-agenda public comments only may now call our teleconference line at 562-299-6622. For those who submitted comments via email, your comments will be read into the record and no further public comment via teleconference will be permitted. Secretary Kavanaugh, may I have the first speaker on the phone?
Chair Owens, there are no calls for public comment.
Thank you. Secretary Kavanaugh, do we have any written public comment on non-agenda items to be read into the record?
There are no non-agenda public comments.
Okay.
Correspondence.
We will now close the non-agenda public comments. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Before we begin the consent calendar comment period, I would like to again remind members of the public participating telephonically that the city's meeting rules contained in the Downey Municipal Code prohibit any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting, even if you are participating telephonically. Each speaker shall have 3 minutes to address the commission on consent calendar items. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding consent calendar items only may now call our teleconference line at 562-299-6622. For those who submitted comments via email, your comments will be read into the record and no further public comment via teleconference will be permitted. Secretary Kavanaugh, may I have the first speaker on the phone?
Chair Owens, there are no calls nor correspondence for this consent calendar.
Thank you, Secretary Kavanaugh. We'll now close the consent calendar public comments. I'll now take turn asking each commissioner if they have any question or comments on any consent calendar item. Vice Chair Montoya.
None for me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duarte.
None for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Ortiz.
And for me either.
Thank you. Commissioner Uva.
Nothing for me.
And I have none at all. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items.
I approve a motion to approve consent calendar number 4.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Secretary Kavanaugh, could you please take the roll call vote?
Commissioner Uva,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Duarte,
Yes.
Vice Chair Montoya,
Yes.
and Chair Owens.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously with all 5 in favor to approve the consent calendar items.
Okay, at this time, I don't see any other business. Item 9, item 10, staff member comments. Deputy City Manager Schindler, do you have any additional staff comments?
Yes, thanks, Chairman Owens. Just an update. So we work closely with our Downtown Property Owners Association, that's District of Downey, looking for different ways to activate our downtown. Recent conversations have been around, how can we close, part of that area, make it kind of promenade-esque for certain events. We were able to obtain some grant funding for some bollards. The thought is to have removable bollards on the intersection of Downey and 2nd, and then just to the north at the intersection of Downey and 3rd. They're pricey, and it turns into a public works job where we're digging into the street and dealing with existing utilities. So we were able to access some grant funds. We think we have some other pots of money that we're going to be able to use to supplement the entire budget. So hopefully within the next 90 to 120 days, we'll have some construction bids approved to install some bollards in our downtown with the goal of being able to host activities in the fall of this year. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Aldo. That's a great, great addition. I'm a big fan of the downtown. I don't go there often enough, but I like to see, elbow to elbow crowds once we can return to that. It's good for us, good for Downey, good for business. Okay, so now we're able to adjourn the meeting until March 2nd, 2022 at 6:30. Thank you all for your attendance.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Good night.